Welcome, everyone. We got another very special edition of the Coin Rivet podcast. You got the man, the myth. Look at him. He's already ready to box. He's in good shape. He's doing weight loss bets. Bill Perkins, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great, man. Thank you for making the time. I know you're rushing around, traveling, doing some stuff. So first of all, before we talk about poker, crypto, all the normal jazz, what's happening health-wise? I see you're on a health kick. I saw some befores, seeing some afters. I mean, you're making big transitions. What's going on?
Yeah, we all went through the pandemic, and early in the pandemic, following the data, I estimated it was like a 1 in 20 shot I was going to die in the next 3 years, and so I basically kind of was like, okay, there's some things I need to enjoy now. Like, I'm not going to not eat the chocolate chip cookie. I'm not going to have the pizza. I'm going to kind of enjoy life because it doesn't it looked pretty bad. As the data changed. Right. I had set habits that set me on just really a bad long-term course. Right. Like, so I wasn't going to die. The odds were way, 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 way lower than what we originally predicted. But I had 3 to 6 months of setting bad habits. And that followed me for about a year and a half. Right. So it's really simple math. Like, if you just eat like a cookie a day or 230 calories extra a day over the course of 2 years, anybody my frame or lower will be obese in 2 years. Right. And so I was way out of shape. Right. I was way out of shape.
I'll be honest.
I was out there completely wrong. To the point where I was on a trip on vacation. I got on a scale and literally like tears welled up in my eyes. Like, how did I get to this point? And I got engaged and I was getting married, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna get in shape for the bachelor party. I can't show up to my bachelor party slovenly. Like, this is just not me. I wrote a book on how important it is to do your best and be in best health and how it impacts your whole life fulfillment. And here I am, like, slouching, and so that's die with zero. And so I said I'm gonna do it. And then of course, friends are good friends. Like, they're like, no, you're not. I'll bet you can't. And I was like, well, I don't lose these type of bets, right? Like, it's like humans are bad with net present value. Like, we don't see the small steps, but if they give them a upfront value, it's like enough to get them going. But I was going to do it anyway, but this was just like kind of that emphasis of I cannot lose. And so I have a bet to get under 9% body fat by April 22nd, from being basically at the line of obese.
What is the actual line of obese? What's the technical?
I think now it's like 25% body fat. They consider you obese. Wow. Some people might say 23, whatever. I was definitely 24.
So just to be clear, there was, to your math and calculations, there's always, I find fascinating because you're pretty dialed into, even if you eat a piece of pizza, how much time on the treadmill, you do a lot of these sort of like lifelong calculations, short term. You were really thinking that, all right, I'm going to enjoy and eat a little more and do, because you thought there was like a 1 in 20 chance you were going to die in the next, in
the next 3 years. Yeah. I was bringing experiences forward, right? When there's no long term, right? Like, if you're going to die in a week, you're not going to Disney World 2 weeks from now. You're going to Disney World now, right? Like, if that's what you wanted to do, right? So if you're just like, hey, I want to enjoy, I want to have these hedonistic experiences, which, cookies and things like that are. It's like, you're not putting it off. There's no reason to have a body for the long term when you're going to die, right? And so that was kind of the mentality, probabilistically speaking. You're never going to get it exactly right. But I was just kind of like letting it go. Like, hey, I'm just going to enjoy the last days of whatever,
For sure. Well, you don't want to be working out 2.5 hours a day. That doesn't make sense.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, well, I'm not doing that, right? Yeah. That was my choice. And I developed those habits. And those habits, you got to break them. They're hard to break.
It's very interesting. I want to focus on the lighter, more fun things, but just while we're on this a little bit dark, of you thought there was a 5% chance you might die. This stuff in the war, Ukraine, Russia, pretty crazy. It brings to light talk about nuclear war, and it's one of those things. Like, I'm 35. You're what, 53, 4. Like, this hasn't really been talks of nuclear war, like that much scare, like in the last decade, I'd say. I don't remember hearing about it. But then once you start hearing this and it brings to light again, wow, there's so many nuclear warheads all over the world from powerful countries. And like, it's a game of kind of, and I saw an article from Stanford, I believe it was, saying that the chance of nuclear war in a decade, and I think, I don't know, the articles maybe like 5 years ago or 3 years ago, and it was like saying it was highly likely, and then they said within 100 years it's inevitable. What are your kind of thoughts on nuclear war? Just to get, I'd love to hear your side, because I know you think about these type of things.
Yeah, I think like to handicap the odds is like whatever, like, but the fact that it is a non-zero, and like, that you could be debating whether it's a 1 in 100 or 10%. I saw some guy put out that all those numbers, 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000, that was way higher than my chance of dying of COVID, right? Like, and so I take these things seriously, and the first thing I decided, okay, how is it going to change me? Do I want to try and survive a nuclear exchange, right? Because you may just be like, I don't want to survive a nuclear exchange. I want to go out with the bombs, and so then I did discuss that with my family, my friends, like, hey, this is the way I see it. I'm going to be looking for a signal. If you want to survive, obviously it's not stay and fight, it's go to a place where the bombs are not going off, right? And then and then leaving in a significant amount of time, right? So when you get like a signal like, hey, the odds are unacceptable now that I have to leave. And so there was a lot of discussion and preparation on like, where are we going? Where are we leaving? What will be the signals for us to leave so that we have enough time to get it? Because when the signal's like everybody knows it, you're not going anywhere. Like, I have experience, I don't know, I've been through like 6 or 7 hurricanes probably.
Yep.
And I've seen many people wait too long and then could not leave. Yep. And were in serious danger or and had problems. People who could leave and did not want to leave, or there's people I want to stay, and that's a valid choice. Like, I want to stay. I'm going to go through the risk of the hurricane or the bad event, and I want to help people, right? Or I just want to go out with the storm. But if you don't, what category you don't want to be in is, I want to be the guy that gives it the college try to fight, but I didn't do any kind of preparations. So for me, it was just prepping to give it the college try if this event happens, and monitoring what I monitor to see what I think. Okay, I'm not going to get X right, but is X higher or lower based on the information I'm seeing, and what are my red line like we're leaving? And it's a real difficult thing, because it's not just me. There's my daughters, my ex-wife, my fiance. If I can't convince, let's say, my 18-year-old daughter to go, I'm not going. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to live in a world without her. Like, oh, I survived the nuclear holocaust. I'm in South America somewhere, and she's, you know what I mean? Like, that's just not going to happen. So, and when you leave early, you look crazy.
Right.
I mean, you're just crazy, right? Like, the people who left in 1939 and got out of Germany, right? The Jews who left, their neighbors were probably like, these guys are crazy. Like, what are they doing? Like, it's not that bad. Like, it's not, this will never happen, whatever. Like, the people were just like, I think the Japanese are going to bomb Pearl Harbor. We shouldn't be walking around out here. They look absolutely stone nuts, right? And honestly, when you're talking about a low probability event with an unacceptable EV like outcome, most likely you're wrong, right? You're going to look like an idiot. Oh, that's the idiot who left to South America for a month and then came back. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like a really hard thing to execute on. And so that's kind of,
Yeah, that's interesting. The hurricane analogy, it hits close to home. I remember during Streamboat, we were there, and it was like 2 days into the house that we were at, and it was like, oh, some crazy thing. I remember Kevin Martin was like, oh, I might just stick it out or wait. But I mean, there was like prison breaks. Like the thing that was absolutely that was, and it took us.
I left, and we kept telling them, like, guys, you got to leave, you got to leave. The place, they were saying, absolutely destroyed. Ripped off, and had they not left when they could not have gotten out, and they could not have. And the BVI didn't have. They almost went full Lord of the Flies. They didn't have fresh water and food for 5 days. It's not like the U.S. where we have National Guard flying in helicopters whose job is to make sure you don't die. Right? If you're not comfortable, it's miserable. The toilets don't work. You got to do all kinds of crazy stuff, but you get your MREs and you get your water, right? And so. And they didn't have that. And we were running boats back and forth. There was no customs. There was no nothing. We were running back and forth. And I remember I was supplying water and supplies to the BVI.
You took a plane. You were
Gabe.
sending. I remember that. Yeah,
Gabe was running his boat, and there were like a couple boats. Most of the boats were strewn all over the water, right? But there were like some small boats, and Gabe, I was helping him, funding him, and getting supplies. And he was heading over to Yoast and a couple other places, just dropping off pallets of water and stuff like that to help out, our neighbors. And it was super dicey, right? And so I've seen it, in Houston, it's like, hey, a hurricane's coming, blah, blah, blah. It's fine to get out, And then all of a sudden, the masses understand, like, I got to get out. And it's like a 24-hour traffic jam, blah, blah, blah. All their plans, it's like, it's a disaster. So anyway.
That all kind of, that hits close to home and makes a lot of sense. Just it's like you said, on this scale, it's sort of hard to really to put that in perspective, and people think, oh, like nothing's possible. But I like the way you sum that up. What is going on with gas now? I mean, natural gas is something you're expert in. You've been doing for a long time. What is happening with the prices in the market? I mean, the stock markets, you see the markets kind of crashing with war. It's just generally never a good thing. What is sort of anything unique or different about these type of times that you see within natural gas? Is there something that's
domestically, there's domestically in the international gas market, we're generally we have a tight market here in the US, and we have a limited ability to export, right? But we are exporting what we can. And over in Europe, they're entirely dependent on Russian flows. 40% of their natural gas consumption comes from Russia. It is not replaceable. And they only have these numbers won't mean that much to you, but the Northwest Europe has about the same population as the United States. We're 330 million. They're about 300 million, I think, or 310 million. They don't have as much industry, I think, but they have half the storage capacity we have. So they don't have that much operational flexibility, and they rely on Russian imports for 40% of their natural gas consumption. And so those markets went absolutely bananas on the threat of either damage to pipelines from Russia that go through Ukraine, or Russia cutting off the gas, or the EU saying we're not going to want the gas. I don't think the EU would be basically creating its own civil war if they cut off the gas, because it would be an absolute disaster. They're trying to wean themselves off of Russian gas, but Russia for years, through political operations, funding environmentalist groups, funding anti-shale groups, funding anti-nuclear groups, etc., has been cleverly creating this dependency on their gas, right? Like if they don't produce gas, right, and they don't have nukes and they don't have other energy sources, etc., they're just constantly going to be dependent on Gazprom for the gas. And so here we are in a situation where they are, Russia is their lifeline. And so the markets are reacting to any kind of disruption in that. Their coal went bananas because there's a disruption in coal shipments. And
I saw gas prices $6 a gallon here. I've never seen that. I mean,
you're talking gasoline. If you're talking gasoline, I was talking natural gas right then. But if you're talking gasoline, it's the same thing. I mean, we have a tight crude oil market. We have a lack of investment in the infrastructure for producing crude, mainly because any kind of transition, the world that says we want to get to here in our energy mix, but the transition has not been planned well. It's been run by extremist factions and like, oh, we got to go all renewables now, all renewables, et cetera. And it doesn't work. And so we've been underinvested in energy infrastructure, and production is generally just very, very tight. And so you cannot take off major suppliers without having a massive run up in prices. And, a lot of people like, oh, we just shut off Russian crude, or we won't take this. Gasoline comes from crude oil, and refineries refine the crude. And each refinery has a certain blend of crude that it is designed to take in. So crude, although fungible, isn't as fungible as you think it is for producing the products that you want efficiently. And so the market is freaking out over that. Like, you know, where's the Russian crude go? And then what crude do I do to replace that crude that went in my refinery? And, you know, everybody's experienced supply chain backlogs, right? They've ordered something online and it takes forever to get there.
Yeah.
You know, now with these sanctions and disruptions and possibly even more disruptions, we're having, you know, the market respond to the scarcity, the scarcity as a result of that.
Makes a lot of sense. What is I guess, would you say the opportunity, is it similar when, so you're trading natural gas and this is a big part of what you're doing, is this when there's these world type events, is that inherently true that there's big opportunities, like because the markets fluctuate so much?
I mean, it's I and people like me thrive in chaos, right? When everything's normal and nothing's moving, etc. Like we don't thrive, right? Like we might do okay or whatever, but like that's not where we thrive. Yeah, sometimes we get our heads chopped off, right? Like we're wrong, or we, you know, just the bad thing plays out. But that is where massive opportunities are made. And you know, before the invasion happened, I was very concerned that there were vested interests that become so profitable from the invasion that influence was filtering its way up into the decision, the leaders. That's just my own kind of like macro 20,000 foot view. I'm not saying that's what exactly happens, but just think of the massive profits that are being made and the shift in dollars, right? Like and wealth and infrastructure, et cetera. Like somebody's losing and somebody's benefiting, right? And so it's very disruptive, right? And a lot of the losing is distributed, right? And the wins are concentrated. And so, you know, you just kind of have this like, you know, group of people who really do well, right? And then they tend to have done well in prior, and they tend to have influence and lobbying influence and the ear of decision makers. Right. That's just kind of my loosey-goosey. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's just kind of like, where are the interests aligned? But for traders in general, I thrive in chaos.
That makes perfect sense. What is let's talk a little bit about, let's transition, although it's very interesting. Let's talk a little about the crypto and markets in general, because crypto, you know, it's sort of been in a bit of a lull. I know you follow it a little bit. It's obviously in poker and in general, it's just a very popular thing. People talk about it. It's around. What are your current thoughts on let's just take the major stuff, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and NFTs. Let's even package in some blue chip NFT stuff.
Do the package. I mean, I kind of stayed away from crypto. Not that I hate it, not that whatever. I just kind of was, you know, I looked at it as like an adoption play. Like, is the world going to adopt this thing? Like, are people going to adopt it, right? Like, so, you know, most of the cheerleaders for crypto, they're always pointing out like this person adopted it and this person, and it's an inevitable, right? Because you have to accept it, you have to adopt it, right? The belief has to be there. And my answer was, I don't know. And you know, people were like, well, it's going to 500,000 or 1 million, and I was just like, well, then I can wait. I don't need to buy it at 50,000 if it's going to 1 million. I can buy it at 200,000, right? Like I can get more evidence. And so, you know, that actually happens in investing a lot. Like there are people who don't invest at the pre-seed or the angel side. They'd rather invest later at a higher valuation with more information. And so kind of that was my take for the longest time. But then, you know, with DeFi and the interest rates that were going out there with Ethereum, I was like, wait a minute, I could take a 30% hit or a 20% hit and be break even. You know, like the interest rates or the return on I call magic internet money, right? I just said, I'm going to allocate a certain amount of funds. I'm going to get long. And I'm just like, okay, I see the utility. I mean, even when the Stablecoins were yielding 8 or 10%, I was just like, wait, what? You know what I mean? Like interest rates here are 0. These are in theory Stablecoins, right? Like some risk there. You can actually buy insurance on it going to 0, and you can net 8%. I'm just like, this is no brainer. I have to allocate to the space. And so I have somebody managing. It's not me. I'm not doing that. You know, I pay them a percent off of a benchmark. They manage it and they farm, and I collect the interest, and I'm happy with it. And I have I decided that I wanted to have enough data has come out that I want to have this allocation to crypto. NFTs, I bought some punks at the right time. It got to a level where I cared, right? Punks, when they were like 1,000 or 5,000 or whatever, people are like, oh, they're going to double or whatever. I really don't care. At the time it takes me to do this or whatever, like, it's not worth an hour of my time, the doubling, right? That's just where I'm at, right? No brag, no whatever. It's just not, it's where I'm at. It's not for other people. Like, feel free to make all that money. But when they got up to like 60,000 or 70,000 and they could double, then it got my attention.
Right.
So I ripped into CryptoPunks, bought some, and then all of a sudden they went crazy and they were trading 300 something thousand, and I got rid of some of them, and I kept.
Yeah, I remember I was with you in Austin and we were talking about it. You were just like, you're just kind of like, you're like, this is bananas. Like, how are these things this much right now? And
yeah,
it's.
I bought them. I was bought on vacation, and it really has a collector. Like, once I bought one, I was like, oh, I have to buy another. Well, two's not. You can't have two. You gotta have three. Three's odd. You gotta buy four. Next thing you know, you're like 5 or 6 CryptoPunks out of nowhere, and then literally a month later, it's like, oh my god, what happened? And so I peeled out of the CryptoPunks except I want, and then I'm happy to keep one forever or donate it to a museum or whatever at some point. And then I heard about World of Women, and I was like, okay, I called the person to buy them for me, and I was like, all right, buy these. And then I kept buying more, and then I was looking at the screen. I was like, I want those, and then I want the Night Goddess, and then you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, I don't know, it's an addiction. It's like, I don't know how. Now I know how people get into Pokemon cards or baseball cards. It's like you just had to have them, right? And I actually was talking to the founders and owners, and they're very, very smart guys, very forward thinking about the IP and the way it works. Like, when you buy a World of Women, you own it, right? You can exploit it. You can make T-shirts. You can do a cartoon show. You can put it on commercials, and you own the revenue, which is not true on these other things. And I thought that's extremely, extremely powerful and extremely a big benefit that was undervalued. So I bought even more World of Women. And I love them.
What's the floor on those now? It seemed like, I know those really went up a lot. It's one of the stronger projects, or at least it was. I'm not up to date on daily on that. But I do follow CryptoPunks.
I think it's an extremely strong project, and I think the founders, the way they're treating the IP and the rights, is just like genius. It's very forward thinking. And then they contacted me about a Night Goddess that I bought, and some other people like, well, we'll chop it. They want a piece, and they said, we want to do a DAO and choose which one will represent us in Christie's, right? And we sold off an auction of Christie's one of my Night Goddesses, which was kind of sad because I just love them. You know what I mean? I don't know what happened when I bought them. I don't know what happened. There's some sort of psychological switch that happens when you got it and you're an owner of a record and you have it, and you're like, I can make T-shirts. Like, I made some Night Goddess T-shirts that I have in my room. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, I got like
it honestly, as a collector, and I do like NFTs. I'm in some exposure with them, and in a fund where there's like a lot of CryptoPunks. Same thing. It is kind of sad when you sell, and it's like, it's similar to baseball cards. And I know you have a bit, you're in this, our boy Kuntz, Jason, obviously Evan Mathis, these guys, experts. They've done it. They've ridden the storm. They actually genuinely love it. And now they sort of, rose up a ton, came down some. It's hard to let go of stuff because, like, it's almost like if you buy it and you like it, it's like there's really not a reason to really sell unless you need it. So it's kind of hard. I do find it's a little bit hard to release.
But I wanted to support the project. I think it was important to get the print out there. I think know, Rick Lowe, an artist here, he ran Project Row Houses. He has a MacArthur Genius Grant, whatever. And we were talking about African American artists and buying art. And I was a collector of John Biggers, and I went to LACMA to give a talk. They have like the role of the collector. And, one of the things that stuck with me that Rick said to me, which is very, very true, is the role of the collector is to signal to the art market what is important. And so what is meaningful, what should be preserved. And so I almost, like, when I was collecting John Biggers, and now I'm trying to do Charles White and Ed Barnes and some other artists, that I take it almost as a duty for me to collect these, because what you see in museums are what people collected 1,000 years ago. The patrons collected it years ago. They decided what was important and what was what was important for humanity to preserve.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes that was done through donations to a museum and a curation team that they were part of. And then they were like, we're going to buy this for the museum or whatever. But that still goes on today, right? Like there's a board that collects artists today for museums that future generations will see. And so, once that kind of sinks into you, like a sense of purpose in collecting, then you're like, no, I really, you know what I mean? Like my job is to uphold the value and I'll pay. Like, what do you mean it's going too cheap? I'll pay this. Pay attention. This is significant. This is culturally important, and that's kind of what's happening, in the NFT world. And there's a battle, right? People are like, it's worthless. It's not worth it. It's a JPEG. And there's people like, no, this is important. And here's the price print. And, eat a bag of dicks. Like you just don't get it. Right. So that battle will be played out. And we'll see if future museums will be, having displaying NFTs and blockchain, et cetera. Well, I mean, it's yet to be seen, but.
And I think it's interesting as well, because one of the big problems I have with sports cards is it's hard to display, because not so much that you want to like show off your thing, but really what is art, what are cards, what are NFTs? It's like you want to see them, you want to enjoy them, you want to easily showcase them. But like NFTs, that's kind of nice, right? Like if you can scroll it, you can get a picture, you can have them circling, or if you go to a hotel and you want to check in, you could upload your NFTs, and that's the next step, right? You go to a random place in Europe and like you want to like check into the hotel and you just give them stuff. Like that stuff's great. And that for sports cards is hard because you bury them in a safe. It's kind of difficult.
100%. I mean, I maybe Kuntz will get mad at me. I don't know. Anyway, no, I don't know anything about sports cards, but I told him, I was like, well, what are these cards going for? And what are these cards going for? And he told me, these cards, I'll just stay with Jackie Robinson. I won't talk about the other cards. But he told me some cards, and I said, I don't know shit about your market, but the Jackie Robinsons are undervalued. We need to buy them all. And he was like, why? I said, because there can never be another Jackie Robinson. Never. He transcends cards. He's a historically significant figure. And so doesn't matter his records, doesn't matter whatever comes out, doesn't matter if somebody hits more home runs than him or whatever. These cards are undervalued, and the market is not representing them. I wanted to buy all of them and burn half of them and say, you can't own these. These are too special for you to own them. So we went on a freaking tirade to try and accumulate them. And it's hard to acquire cards and get them and buy the values. And I was like, these 6s, 9s. He was like, well, they're already up this percent. I was like, it doesn't matter. Keep buying. Because I come from the art world. Yeah. Like not like I'm the art world, but like, I come from that thinking like, this is culturally significant. These are important. Our job is to send a signal to the market that's important. Yeah. So buy them all. It doesn't fucking matter. Yeah. Like you don't get to own a Jackie Robinson. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like how dare you sell a Jackie Robinson for that price? Right. Like that's how I felt. Like I was fired up, And so, but he was more, being the market tactician and accumulating them. And then, they finally got to a price where it's like, oh shit, we can't fucking buy them anymore. like point made, point made, right? And, and so there are other things like that that other people are passionate about or that are significant that they're like, oh, I'm sending a signal,
That makes a ton of sense. Well, I'll kind of segue out of this. I know Yuga Labs just acquired CryptoPunks and Meebits, which is a pretty big deal. Allegedly, I'm not actually so familiar with that Yuga Labs, but I know that does matter and sort of gives up the commercial rights to the community. So that's something. But also, I just want to make a price prediction. Just every guest on Coin Rivet would like to make a January 1, 2023. Right now, it's mid-March. What are your thoughts? Where do you put Bitcoin and Ethereum? Just give me a price. Don't have to give me a reason. Just tell me where do you see Bitcoin and Ethereum settling on the end of this year, very end.
Oh man, I mean, Jesus, Jeff. I mean, like I want to. This is going to be a super wag because like, what happens with the war? What happens with sanctions? Does the Fed do with interest rates? Yada yada yada. Like I would. How about this? I'm flat bid the Bitcoin to S&P. I'm flat bid the Bitcoin to NASDAQ spread. How about that?
Okay, so
like as I would take Bitcoin over NASDAQ. I would definitely take. How about this? I would definitely take ETH over the S&P 500.
But fair enough. Can you just for fun because you win.
Yeah, I know people want to say. I would say. ETH is probably 3,200 to 3,500 product, assuming no nuke situation. I would say that Bitcoin, I think it's fair. I'm not like a big. I'm a bigger buyer of ETH than Bitcoin, even though I think Bitcoin has some more widely distributed and better functionality. And the only reason why is a lot of people complain about the fees with Ethereum, right? Like, oh, it's not, but it's not meant for buying a soda or a $10. It's meant for $20,000 things and So when I look at the fees, everybody's like, well, the notional of what I'm moving, it's less than a credit card transaction fee. It's way less than a credit card transaction fee, right? And so it depends on what, based on the fees, you can tell what ETH market is targeting, right? It's not targeting you sending $100 to this guy or $50. It's targeting you moving your CryptoPunk, right? Your $400,000 CryptoPunk, or settling some derivatives transaction that's multi-millions of dollars where you don't even give a shit about the damn fee, right?
Right.
And so, it's really what size of a transaction does it have to be less expensive than a credit card transaction? And you could just do the math and figure it out, whatever it is. And so I don't think it's that unreasonable. I just think the target market is different, right? The utility of it is different. And then, there's people who want the utility to be for like everyday transactions is not there. Bitcoin, I think the latest things that happened in Canada, what's going on with Russia, what's going on the United States response to Russia and sanctions and holding people's money, and whether they're bad guys or not, everybody has due process and a law. And so to have just like some government just go, oh, you can't move your yacht or you can't do this, like, it's always okay when it's the other guy until they come after you. And everybody always thinks they don't come after you until it's like some grandmother who gave a protest money before it was illegal or before it was anything. And then they shut down their bank account. And then you're like, I see the value in Bitcoin.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Or you're planning for a nuclear war or something, and you're like, shit, I can't get my money out of here. I don't have a bank account down there. It's a penny. I don't want to move $100,000 in cash.
That was one.
You know what I mean? Like, how do I move money across the border?
Stood out the most to me, like that exact example. I mean, you mentioned earlier the Holocaust. One of obviously like the most horrific things, the Holocaust, this period of time. But imagine, being there, and like you said, someone's like, "Oh man, I think we should go." You look crazy. But like you could actually, you can't, your money's in a bank, your money's in whatever, you can't move. And that's one of the things like that is one of the actual utilities for crazy events and things that you can kind of move quickly and easily and do that. That makes a lot of sense. And it is.
Yeah. I think the crypto heads were all on top of this. And then they probably, they looked at all these historical examples. All right. And, a lot of people think because, oh, it happened 40 years ago, 60 years ago, whatever, 70 years ago, whatever, they think like, oh, it doesn't happen today. But there's examples all around you today where it's happening, and even worse, easier and even worse, right? Ordinary people. Well, they wouldn't do that to me. I had nothing to hide. I'm like, neither did that grandmother. She didn't have anything to hide, right? The old lady, named her bank account's frozen. You know what I mean? Like, what the hell is that, right? And then like even now, like you're like, hey, you're just an average person, 2-family working. Like, I want to plan, and then we want to go to Chile. Well, I don't have a bank account in Chile. I don't whatever. And I like, how am I going to move my money and all this other kind of stuff? And you want to move on a quick, right? Well, you just get on the plane. Bitcoin goes where you go, right? It goes where the words in your head go, right? Now it's like, oh, I can't. If I move cash, it's dangerous, and I get stopped, and I got to fill out a form to move cash, and then I might get robbed when I come. Like it's a hassle, and so people are starting to see real world utility, and it's not like that far fetched, right? Like they're seeing examples of like what Bitcoin can do for them. The trade-off is the volatility in Bitcoin, right? Like the trade-off is like, well, I have this volatility, but I think the utility use case is greater than the volatility.
Right. That's exactly. I
mean, if you go to the mob and say, hey, I need you to get this money somewhere, they're going to charge you 30%. You know what I mean? Like 25, 30%, right? Like they're going to be like, hey, and so like, I'm like, okay, Bitcoin, I mean, it might move 30% down, whatever, but like, I'll take that tax, right? To actually be able to move shit and not have government seize it or random political party gets in power and causes frustration for you, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. I mean, also just from the standpoint too of the actual paper that's done with money, right? Like I imagine, I know Sky's 18, Brisa, you know, your girls are growing up. I have a 3-year-old. Like when our kids are grown up or having families, I would imagine that there won't be paper money, right? Like at some point you're gonna look back and be like, wow, how did we have paper money? Now you can just, you know, it saves money. It's like easy.
I think, yeah, I think that's one of the negatives of Bitcoin. The concept of Bitcoin and blockchain is that, you know, governments crawl the blockchain just as much as individuals do for trading, right? And they're like, wait a minute, we could put our money on a blockchain and track every single dollar, right? Like the one of the benefits of cash is being anonymous, right? Free from spying on you, right? Like you want to go on vacation, you want to get lipo, and you want people to know, or you want to go to strip club, you don't want people to know, you pay in cash, like you could be anonymous, right? Like you can be away from prying eyes. If you have blockchain dollars, right, it's not anonymous, right? And so I think that idea of governments thinking we're going to have like a cashless society where everything is tracked is a very, very, very bad, horrible, Orwellian idea. I mean, I can't stress how bad it is.
That's interesting. That makes a lot of sense as well. Well, I do want to make sure we talk about Skyfi, SynMax, because there's some projects I know you're passionate working on. But before we dive into those, I want to ask you about your time and how you kind of allocate time between family, your own, you know, trading natural gas, business stuff, and then so many other projects and commitments. How do you balance now when you look about your pie chart of time? How do you sort of, do you sit down and roadmap it out, or do you just kind of go within the moment on what you want to do and what you're passionate about? Because you got a lot going on, you know, and it seems like there's work going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of demands on my time. I really realized like I've been thinking about like, what are the distractions that I like that I have that I absolutely need? Because everybody needs that, like, brain, you know, time. And then, you know, all the things that are going on, including planning for a wedding, bachelor party, honeymoon, a war is going on. I have 2 startups. You know what I mean? Yeah. Kids,
podcast,
leisure, health, friends, charitable stuff. Yeah, you know, there's a lot of things pulling on you. And so, like, one of the things is like I've realized like I got to be more judicious on requests for my time and cut them out and just like be no. And I need to have more prompts about like my quality time with, you know, Lara, my fiance, like setting the 7 o'clock alarm. Like we're going on spring break and we just had a conversation. Are you gonna be working all day? No. Well, when are you gonna go work? You're like, it was a whole thing. And it was like, basically we came down to, okay, I'm 50% available between 5, but it's random, right? Before 5. And then after 5, I'm 80% available. You know what I mean? Because it's probabilistic, like something always comes up. There's a call, a thing, an idea. You know, the world doesn't stop just because you want to, right? And you have to decide what's important to you and how you're going to balance it out. And it's a constant juggling act with feedback, right? Because it's not just what I want, but it's the obligations and the needs of other people that are close to me that need my time. So, you know, I think this is the perfect balance, or near perfect, or at least 80%, 85%. And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, juggle this around, right? You know, and people and you know, people like keep asking me, have you been playing any poker? I'm like, I absolutely have no time to play poker.
Right.
Like, I just don't.
Well, you know? I think honestly, I think it's the most interesting thing in the world is this. And I think also your book, Die with Zero, which you know, obviously you're one of my closest friends, you know, family. I love it. I'm endorsing it, but like, I genuinely, that type of way of looking at life in the pockets, it's crazy because it's like, it's so valuable to what you're saying. Like, I think you work hard to be busy, right? You work hard to have things that you can make money or do things. Let's just talk business side. But then at some point you become so busy, or you have so many options. It's hard if you don't say no, or you don't tuck stuff away. You know, it's easy to not put a formula on it, to not think about it, right? Like, what am I doing this for versus spending time with my kids or doing this? So, you know, I think it's just awareness. I think a lot of people don't, and me included, like I'll find myself in even during the pandemic, like a pattern or something I'm doing. I'm like, wow, like you have an option to do what you want with your time. And then you got to really think about it. Otherwise you just kind of go through the motions, or you're doing things that don't make sense. They just from an outsider, why would you do that?
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that make people successful, they put higher order function in default mode network, which means it's automatic. Yeah. Like something happens. I'll give you an example. I was driving today to go to, I was at workout. I was like, I'm going to stop by my friend's art studio. And I was driving and I drove by a switch yard, substation. I saw some land around it. And I'm just like, that's a good spot to locate a battery. Send a voice note to Lara. Lara, this is for me. Check this address for a battery to put a location down, etc. Right? I almost didn't even have to think about that. That is like default mode for me, right? And so like I auto work. You know what I mean? Like something happens, I'm already like auto working. And so that's good because it produces a lot of plus EV spots and a lot, you know, future money. But it's also bad because maybe I should just be looking at how nice the neighborhood or something else is, right? I'm an autopilot, right? And so I need to get off autopilot. And everybody has that. Like, you know, they're constantly working on autopilot or in default mode network, whether they're in real estate or poker or whatever. And like, oh, there's a game, I'm gonna go play a game or whatever. And they're not really thinking like, wait, what should I really be doing with my time right now?
Yeah.
Should we go play this game for 8 hours and being up late and not whatever? Or should I go to dinner and a movie with my girl or hang out with my kids and go watch a movie and chill? Yeah. Right.
Well, I just think it's fascinating about the pockets of life because, you know, that's what DAO Zero to me is. It's like talking about your different stages of life and what it is. Cause like, I mean, there was a period of time, you know, I consider myself highly motivated, doing a lot of things right now, you know, in the last, let's call it 7 years, but there was a period when I was like 21 to 27 or so. I mean, obviously the program where we met and you know, that was like a kind of a triggering point for me to kind of get more serious and motivated on things. But there was a period of time where I was kind of just like, you know, playing video games, playing online poker, haphazardly, partying, doing stuff. But it's like there's just these pockets in life, right? Where you, and then we get kids and you get married or you have
we call them time buckets. And so like, there's seasons in your life where certain activities are optimal and certain activities are suboptimal. They belong in another period in your life. And if you don't, you know, there's a top line optimization and there's a period by period optimization. And so like, you know, it takes your prefrontal cortex. You have to think about it. It's not going to osmosis itself. Nobody owes you. Nobody's coming to fucking save you. Like nobody, hold on. My dog is like, he's gone nuts. He's like, this is the time to bark. He's like, I don't care if you're walking by the front of our house, he's gonna bark. And so like,
I think it's fascinating, like to think. I think that's
but anyway, what I'm saying is like nobody's come to save you, so you need to figure out like, okay, I'm 20 to 25 or I'm 25 to 30. What are the experiences I want to have in this period? What is optimal for me to be doing in relationship to the whole arc of my life, right? So that's extremely important. And even if you just like take the money aspect out of it, like everybody should be thinking about that way to optimize like their journey to the grave. Because like, listen, we're all going to the same destination. You, me, anybody who's listened to this podcast, we're all going to the grave. Now there may be an afterlife or whatever, but that's the destination. So it's really about optimizing the journey and what experiences you want to have in each period.
Yeah, and again, awareness. I think it's like sometimes you don't think of things because you're just in this rat race. You're in this just kind of going. But even like my parents, they're 67, 70. You know, my wife's from Brazil. They're much more, I think, as a cultural whole, family oriented. People live until they're married at home, stuff like that. But you know, my parents are 70. It's like, all right, let's figure how long they're living. I watched this somewhere, but it just really hit home because it's obvious. But like, let's say I see my parents 3 times a year, 2 times a year. Like now we're talking about seeing them like 15 or 20 or 25 more times in my life, right? Like that's like crazy. It's not like, oh, it's 10 years, you know, like I'm gonna see him for 15 more years. No, I'm seeing him like, you know, however many times. So it makes you sort of hit that home where like, you don't like I didn't even think like that. It's there.
Yeah, I definitely think like that. And you have to think like, are you okay with that? Like if you have that, like you may or may not be okay with that, but that's how it bees, right?
Right. Or being more present, right? Like exactly. Like it's not like, all right, I'm there, I'm on my phone or I'm around.
3 more spring breaks with my kid. I got 3 more spring breaks after this one with my youngest daughter. You know what I mean? And even then, like, you know, the last 2, they like just don't want you around. It's a different spring break, right? And so like they don't even want me around now. Like, who am I kidding? But you know what I'm saying? It's like when you take a moment to think about it, you get off autopilot and you're like trying to do it, you can then go ahead and like start getting the most out of each period of your life, each relationship, each decision, etc. off autopilot.
I want to ask you, DAO Zero, though, where did that title, how long did the whole process take to make the book? Give me a little bit of insight on like, where did you wake up one day and you're like, I got to do this? Did someone tell you how you had to do
I mean,
it?
it's right in the beginning of the book. It was basically, the book was not going to be a book. It was going to be a computer program for me to optimize my life. And in a medical interview, one of the psychological questions are you afraid of running out of money? And I was like, I hope I run out of money. And I gave him the whole spiel, and he was like, you got to write a book. You just got to write a book. I've never heard anything like this. I've asked this question hundreds of times. Nobody's ever answered it that way. And these are great concepts. And so what I realized is that what's more important than the computer program, which cannot be as detailed as I want because of the compute power problem, is the mental models, right? The top line mental models, the way of thinking to optimize your life and help other people. Because the book is to save my own life. The book is like, how do I get all this shit that I've been thinking in my head, my way of thinking, in a way that's easy to digest and put in, that actually gives me life energy back, that gives me hours of my life, that has me die with zero regrets. And so that's how the book came to be. And so, I brought on Mary Krakowski, a researcher and writer, to work with me. It took like I ran around, I saw agents, chose an agent held an auction, had a book deal, then just got to writing the book. It took like a year and some change to write the book. Then the pandemic delayed the release and yada, yada. But, that was that, right? And then the book was out. And then it comes from like a rational human being would use all his resources towards his goals before he dies, right? That's just it. Like you die. Like one of the ways that you optimize your life is you use all your resources, right? And so you die with zero, right? Like, and so that's the goal. And so that's where it came from. And it's also like, they want catchy toes. They want controversy. Yeah. Like when you walk by it in an airport, you're like, die with zero. Like, what do you mean? Spend all your money? That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy, right? Let me, what the fuck,
And then you read Die with Zero Regrets. That would also be an interesting title. I mean, a little less catchy.
That's what it is, right? Like how you die with zero regrets is you die with zero money. Like that is the key, right? Like, like the guy that, like, this is an extreme example, but the guy who was digging ditches, who dies with $10 in his pocket, is pissed that he spent an hour digging a ditch. You know what I mean? Like, so like if you spent the $10, you'd be like, exactly, I got exactly what I want. I got an experience out of it. Because like, if I give you, it doesn't matter, it's dollars, but like call it whatever. If you don't use the resource, it's like everybody's used to eat all the food on your plate. Don't waste food. Thanks, whatever. Right? Well, it's the same thing. Like use all the money in your bank account. Don't waste it before you die, right? Like it's the same fucking thing. Like it's like très obvious to me. It's an axiom, and I go over through the book ad nauseum, like people's resistance or why they should or not do that. But to me, that's axiomatic,
Right. Yeah, and of course you always have people arguing or saying things, but yeah, I think as a whole, the principle. I think
there's a whole book you can read to get you there. You know what I mean? Like
it provokes thought, which is I think the biggest thing. A lot of people, and I mean, you've changed. I remember on Streamboat or Streamhouse, one of these things we did was our Forbes, right? He basically looked at his life and was like, "Holy shit! Like I'm not living what I want to do. Like what am I doing?" And I think like even if a few people can have that kind of thought provoking, it's very powerful, and I think a lot of people will. But
I mean, like just to go on that thing, it's like I tell people, it's like, well, I did it to save lives, and people are like, oh, you're crazy. Like, what do you mean save lives? And I'm like, listen, when somebody's drowning and you go pull them out of the water and you save their life, guess what? They're still gonna fucking die. They're just not gonna die that day. They're still gonna die. So what did you do? What did you do for them? You gave them more experiences and hours to have. You gave them more life energy. They're gonna have more time with their kids. They're going to have more time going to vacations. They're going to eat pizzas. They're going to do this. They're going to climb Kilimanjaro. So when I write a book about optimizing your life and gives you more of those things, right, that you want to do, more of the experience you want to do, I saved your life just as if somebody saved their life, pull them out of the river. It's the same thing.
And give me some examples, because I know you have a lot, and people, we can just scroll through your Instagram. You could probably take some guesses, but like, what are a few, like looking back, where even before you wrote Die with Zero, even thought that way? Maybe was there some college or some trip that stood out where you're like, I don't know if I want to do it, or it's too much work, but then you did it. You're like, wow, I'm so happy I went to this and did this, even though it's like a lot for a little effort. Maybe like, is there anything that's?
There's nothing things that stepped out. I think more times it's like, am I going to get up? They're like a lot of mini decisions. Like, am I going to get up? I think one of the recent decisions is more personal is that my kids always want to be like, I live in Houston. It's not really a big walking city. Their friends live all over. My daughter's always like, drive me here. And I'm always like, no, not driving. You can't go here or whatever. And then I thought about it and I was like, most of the time I get with her is in the car. They're trapped with me for 20 minutes there, 20 minutes back, or 30 minutes there, back. And I get these touches with them. And so when I thought about like the arc of her life intersecting with mine, soon she's going to be driving and then I don't see her or whatever. These are the moments that I'm going to get. So I made a conscious decision, like even when she's over my ex's house, I'll get up in the morning and drive her. I'll get up, I'll drive her house, I'll drive her. She wants to go to her friends. I told her there's like my nose went from like flip from 90 no to 90 yes, 95 yes. Like unless I'm somewhere, I will always drive her. Right. And I make an effort to go drive her. And so
that's a really interesting concept because, someone like thinking about an airport or, Uber, like that's powerful because that's like your initial thought is, oh, it's a waste of time to drive because I don't need to do that. An opportunity cost sort of thought about money or whatever. But then, yeah, to your point, like that's all of a sudden now you're guaranteeing something that you wouldn't be getting. And then the question is, though, do you take their phones, right? Because kids are now always on their phones and stuff. Because in a car like that, and that's like
it's different battles. I'm not saying they're not battles and it's all sweet and happy, touchy feely.
No, that's a brilliant way. That's super.
That is a decision of the die with zero way of thinking. Like, what do I want in my life? I want this amount of time with my daughter. How am I going to get that? Wait a minute. I'm saying I want this time, but I'm fucking saying I don't want to drive in traffic and bullshit and you're spoiled or whatever my story is, right? And I'm just like, fuck it, I'll drive. I'm tired. I'm tired in the morning. I don't want to get out of bed. It's nice and comfortable. I'm like, fuck it. I'm getting up. I'm gonna go drive over to my ex's house. I'm gonna pick her up and wait for her, and I'm gonna drive her to school. And
it's funny you say that because there's a mutual friend of ours down in this area, and that I remember like the mother would she took the kids drove them like 40 minutes or 35 minutes each way all the time. And I remember thinking in my head, I was like, man, that's so silly. Like they have, the unlimited resources. Like why would do that? But that I didn't never even thought of it like that.
Magic. Your kid's younger, but you realize the magic's in the car. And like when they get their friends in there, you're like an Uber driver. It's not like but you can get all the gossip. You know what I mean? They just talk. You're not there, so you learn stuff, right?
Yeah, interesting.
The magic's there, right? And then you're like, I had to make that decision. Like I was on autopilot, no, right? My autopilot was no. Like, why would I drive you? You don't get to. My dad didn't drive me around when I did that. Yada. Like autopilot bullshit from my period and my culture and shit I didn't get to do, etc. And then I realized, hey, what is my goal here in this time period? What do I want? And then I was like, I'll be the best. I'm an Uber driver. I'm fucking driving.
Great. Yeah, you're glorified Uber driver.
I'm a glorified Uber driver. People think I'm a baller. I'm really a glorified Uber driver.
Beautiful. That's going to be that might be the headline for this podcast. Glorified Uber driver. If we can do it, we'll put that. Let's talk about Skyfi and SynMax. So what's happening exactly here? I mean, I just bet on BP. We got Skyfi going here. We're in. Tell me this. What's happening? What is this?
Okay, so there's a company, SynMax. I trade and I build a lot of tools, like a lot of high-tech tools to help me get information and make decisions, right? Like basically trading is value add on information, right? And so, my fund isn't that big. I'm not like a big giant macro fund. And I was building tools that exceeded my fund's ability to extract value out of them. And so I said, I'm going to start this company that builds tools that anybody can use called SynMax. A lot of it's dark and secret. And that's why that website is kind of like opaque, right? Skunkworks, right? It's like very, very like, okay, but what do you do? And so, but in the process, I buy a lot of satellite data. If you, according to Planet, the leading, one of the American satellite providers, right? When they went public, we were 1% of Planet's revenues, right? That's how much volume of satellite we buy to do it. And I have a couple other projects that needed to buy more satellite data. And honestly, it is the most painful fucking process ever to buy satellite imagery. Like you're trying to give them a bunch of money. It took 3 minutes. You're talking to humans. And I was on vacation and I flew to Paris to meet with another satellite provider. And we were I'm trying to give him $500,000 a deal, and we're talking or whatever. And, during the conversation, I said, listen, I like you, but I don't understand why the fuck I'm talking to you. Like, I can buy a used car online. I can buy almost anything online. Like, this is high technology. Like, why don't you guys have APIs and why or whatever? And I was on this like long tirade about like, this industry is going to where you can be on your cell phone, link up with a satellite, task a satellite, and order any kind of imagery or Earth observation data you want, right? And then instead of complaining about it, I was like, why the fuck am I complaining? Why don't I just build the company? Right? And so Skyfi was born out of that frustration and other users' frustration, the inability to access satellite imagery. And so its mission statement is to democratize access to Earth observation data, right? And, we're not the people that are going to be stopping pollution or showing pollution out there. We're not the people that are going to stop mudslides with subsidence analysis. We're not the people that are going to do, help Ukrainians. Well, we are on the other company, but help Ukrainians with synthetic aperture radar and get them humanitarian corridors out and, track pipeline explosions. We're not the people that are going to have hyperspectral and help crop yields or whatever, but we are the people that are going to empower everybody else to have those tools to change the world. And that's what Skyfi is. It's about empowering everybody to have access to Earth observation data. And it's also the community aspect of it, right? Like, it's funny, like when we do surveys, most people are like, oh, I want to use it for social. I want a picture of my wedding from space. I want this. I'm going hunting and I want to check out the so-and-so, or I'm going snowshoeing and I want to check out whatever, or I'm buying a ranch and I want to make sure it looks like it is with recent imagery, not the 6-month or a year-old, Google Earth thing. So my brain isn't big enough to think about the use cases. It's like, Apple could never have been the App Store. They could host the App Store, but they could have never created all the apps on the App Store, right? Yep. So, my job is not to be like, well, what's the use case? I'm like, nobody's that bright. My job is to empower people through making the process very easy and the price very easy to go ahead and do that thing.
Wow. Yeah, that's right. It makes a lot of sense. And what about from like a security or a standpoint of, how, I mean, we see the images here, right? What is like the actual, you're not seeing someone's house or like they're like a person moving on the thing, right? It's like
no, you can't because you're taking a picture. The picture, you can't deliver a satellite image within an hour anyway, right now under current regs. The resolution isn't high enough. Like you're better off with drones or like there's no restriction whatsoever for somebody getting on a plane and taking your picture at the highest resolution. They can take a Hasselblad camera and a pen and take your picture, right? In a plane. Satellite imagery, the best coming up right now is 10 centimeter resolution. That loosely means that 1 pixel represents 10 centimeters, right? So that resolution, you're not really doing any kind of like spy, spooky, identifying a human privacy thing. And there's drones and planes and photos.
Right. So there's no higher resolution because you're covering the whole world actually with this. Yeah. So there's no one who can complain or say like, oh, this is not international space, or like we don't want you showing Russia or Ukraine or.
Countries can restrict you depending on where you are. Like the United States can shut our aperture over certain areas if they want, and they can say you can't sell this. Like, it's useless and pointless, right? There's tons and tons of satellite companies throwing stuff up. It's constantly snapped by nation states have access to every single square inch of this earth at higher resolutions than I can commercially. And so the idea that there's some sort of like additional security concern is just BS. It's baloney. Okay. And on top of that, like if you really like if you want, there's a time delay associated with taking an image, tasking a satellite. It goes in position. It takes a picture. It goes over a ground station. It downloads and gets to you, right? Right. That is not the tool you want. And when you're targeting something like everybody, like, what about terrorists? Like, you don't need a 25 square kilometer satellite photo, right? You need a drone shot or a guy on the street with pictures, right? Like that's what you need.
Right. Makes
or if it needs something that big, a Google Earth is like, if you're trying to kill infrastructure doesn't get up and move that quickly. It's a Google Earth, So like those things are not there. What you need to be thinking about is like, wow, how do I help crop yields? How do I stop pollution? How do I do I help refugees? How do I, these type of use cases going on? How do I enjoy my life better? How do I create a sense of community, right, around the world? Like, these are the things you can think about. Like how you be a shitty terrorist using satellite photos.
Right.
The nation state might use it for nuclear targeting, but like, it doesn't matter. They already have their satellites.
For sure. Well, I know poker, you mentioned it's not a top priority. I mean, your daughters are in high school and getting ready to go to college, and time is for sure an essence, or it's a value, very high premium for you right now. But tell me a bit. I mean, you cashed $1 million one drop, which was Triton. I mean, that was super exciting. You were, I think, at one point chip leader, deep in it. That was fun to watch, be a part of, and see sweat. Like, for you, if you have a choice, would you rather play a high roller 2-day tournament, let's say, even a 1 day, let's call it 1 day hyper for a decent size buy-in, or would you rather play like a decent size cash game buy-in, like for fun? What's more fun for you?
I think right now probably cash games, because there's just the other aspect of it, you're with your friends, and social aspect of it versus a tournament. Even though let's say even the stakes were equilibrated, or the risk reward was equilibrated, there's just a little bit more social aspect to a cash game, which gets you a little bit more value. Like I've the relationships I've made on the felt, both emotionally and personally, and both monetarily, have been much more profitable than anything on the felt. And so that's the game. Like, if you go to me, I look at poker like guys that go to golf and play wolf, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're like, I'm playing wolf, and like, I'm playing wolf because I make money on the golf course, and that's the money you make, you're doing fucking life wrong. That's just my opinion. You're doing life wrong. Like, you play golf with guys and play wolf with them to form relationships, to have the exchange of ideas, to do other bigger and better things off the golf course, right? Way bigger than the fucking 1,000 or 2,000 or 50,000 or whatever the thousands are you want in a fucking wolf game, right? Like, if that's all you got, I can promise you're doing life wrong, right? And so I look at poker that way too, cash game poker. Like, if all you got is like, yeah, I'm making a couple $100,000 a year on the thing, I'm playing poker, you're just doing it wrong.
Would you say over the course of the time you first found poker, where you like dove in, obviously you have zero idea what's going on, right? You just like get in there, splash around, it's fun, it's gambly, whatever, versus like where you are today, would you say you're surprised maybe at how many relationships, friendships, and also learnings that you've had? Because there are sort of these people from interesting walks of life or different genres of business and areas that you've sort of gotten to know or learn from. Is that fair? Do you think it's
yeah. I would say I would say my poker experience brought me to Mike McDonald, Gary V. These are the guys who told me buy the CryptoPunks and buy the WoW, right? They were the first things. And I was like, okay, like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, I made a bunch of money. Like, they got me into these other people, first got me into my first foray Bitcoin, cashed out, sat on the sidelines, and then was like, okay, I'm not going to be the guy to do the farming. I don't have the time. I'll cut a deal with you, take my farming, and they're printing that money for me. Like, I got exposed to it, right? And then I'm learning about it, right? It's not even just that like I made money or could have made money, but I'm learning about it.
Yeah.
I'm learning things about it that spurs other kind of ideas. I've already talked about other business deals that, helped, and advice that I got, just even like advice that I got that helped me in other deals. And so, yeah, whatever, you could add up all my negative in poker, but my positives off the felt and my exposure to it are way bigger.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the more interesting things too, seeing certain people that they look at it like that, almost an expense, or if they realize like, oh, I'm not. But I mean, to be fair, you've actually done a lot of work on your poker game. Like,
my game is totally different, and I don't feel it'd be real. It's hard, I gotta sit in like super crusher online stakes for me to be a dog, or not really studying or paying attention, in a different mood for me to be a dog. At least that's how I feel. And I think the coaches would say, like, we can objectively test that too, on the software, which you've seen, Jeff. That's fucking delayed, but coming out.
Yeah.
So like, I can get graded, and it's just that, I can get graded versus not being able to be exploited. And so like that we know now.
Right.
And so but it's work. It's work. Like before, when I approached it, it was just a lot of almost zero work. And now I'm like, I don't. Now that I've seen, now that I've seen it, you know what I mean? It's hard for me to like sit down and enjoy it. When I know, like, I get frustrated that I'm not at the level where I know I could be with the training that I've had and things I've been exposed to. That being said, I really enjoy hanging out with diverse people from different backgrounds, all different types of views, and battling it out. And I miss it. I just do not have the time.
For sure. Yeah, no, we'll save sort of that whole poker aspect and product for a later date, but I know it is exciting. There's a lot of stuff happening. And overall, where do you, just kind of looking at it from your view, where do you feel poker is in general, live and online? What's sort of like your take, just from not being super into it, but are there exposed, getting information on it? How do you feel the health of the community for poker is?
I mean, the community has fought every obstacle that's been thrown at it, right? The streamers came out to support the lack of TV support when Black Friday and all that stuff happened, right? We've tried all kinds of promotional products, etc. But it does seem like the tide is turning in the USA now that Sheldon is gone, and people are trying to get out. So I'm cautiously optimistic for online. The attitudes, the laws, or etc. Really the regs, right? Like the way they interpret the regs may go back the other way. But the thing I'm most excited about, and I know this is kind of like I'm biased because I'm involved with hybrid poker, but I've also seen another project in development, I think by the Triton folks, etc. And I've been telling people is that I think we're tapping a way to expand the poker marketplace. Like one of my biggest complaints, or things I say is like, oh, we got the best poker software to teach whatever. I'm like, yeah, but it's all for people who know how to play poker. And honestly, like, fuck them. They have every single tool in the world to them. We're a community. Fuck us. What you need to focus on is a tool that funnels more people to understand the game. Yep. And so what happens is like, we'll be in a bar, right? The poker will be on TV, right? And 90% of the people can't follow the drama. Like you and I would be like, oh my God, he turned a nut gut and a flush draw and there's a big pot. And we'll be like, oh, here it comes.
Yeah, ICM, it's on the bubble. It's on the bubble. And then some other guy.
We're following, right? There's 90% of the people plus don't know what the fucking a flush is, the gut shot, or etc. So they have no concept of the drama, no excitement, nothing to follow. They don't know hand rankings, right? So because they don't know that, the value proposition of that TV show is cut by 90%, right? So the way to expand the audience and interest in poker is to get those people to understand hand rankings and then the possibilities of, well, what cards can come out to make the next hand. If you could snap your fingers and everybody understood that, the ratings for poker shows would skyrocket through the fucking roof.
Yeah. You saw everything. Gambit? Did you watch that?
I did watch it.
And how did you like that show?
I liked it as a drama. I mean, it was a great drama, and I think it brought a lot of interest to it. But like chess is a complex game. It's very easy to develop tools for people to understand this and keep them engaged.
Right.
Right. And so like my thing is like, hybrid poker, I brought it up and they're coming up with it. I was like, yes, you have the greatest teaching tool there is for people who understand poker already. What really we need is King's Crossing, right? So when you see these games on Twitter, King's Crossing, or Ebony's Journey or whatever, it's a way for you to learn how to do logic puzzles, right? Oh, you pull this thing, you pull that thing, whatever. And then you get this, you build the castle and you build this, whatever. Why not build that for hand rankings?
Right.
Why not build that for whatever? Why not, instead of focusing on 3 million people or 1 million people, let's focus on 330 million people, 660 million people, and bring them into our world. And so that's what I'm optimistic about. Like, so I don't mean it like I love the poker community, whatever, but fuck us, dude. The real growth in poker, the real keeping it alive is getting people understanding the sport. The reason why football is popular and number one in America is because kids have been exposed to football from peewee to high school to college.
Well, and they're also smart. They're expanding into Latin America games. The UK, one of my best friends, I think you met him, Io, from, I grew up, he came over from the UK, was here for college, thought American football was shit, like didn't even want to look at it. He's like, what the hell are they doing? This is so stupid. Until like winning fantasy leagues, going to the draft boards and like obsessed. Like, so it's like getting it's exposure. I think that's one of the things in poker we see too. You look at the 21-year-old, 22-year-old playing the World Series main event. There's like nobody, because kids that are 18, 19, 20, college kids and stuff, they're looking at NFTs. They're looking into other things. They're not really having exposure to poker and learning. And like you said, so I think that is ultimately, how do you get new people in to understand the game? So,
yeah, like the poker companies, the people have been focused on trying to steal market share from each other. And I'm just like, this is the dumbest fucking way to go in the poker company. And I'm talking to every single one of you poker companies, every one of you training software companies, every single one of you. Like, I know I'm like, oh, I'm giving away the secret sauce, or like thematically, because really concepts drive everything. Like the future of poker, and whether poker has a future or not, whether it's dying or growing, is whether or not we make it easy for other people to understand what's going on, and then from that funnel, learn poker in a more advanced way. And so I am cautiously optimistic, because I think, after speaking to two, obviously the company I'm involved in, and seeing the other project and them also getting it and going with it, etc., that we may start heading that way. And if all of us headed that way, you would, like, the World Series of Poker would be 30,000 people. There'd be 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 runners.
Yeah, that's
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like, I think you're right. And so people may not know, you are a producer, you've done movies, you like this type of stuff. Do you believe like there could be a Queen's Gambit or a type of show or something? Because in poker, I say this all the time, Rounders. I thought it was a really well done movie, amazing movie, right? Best poker movie, I think, no doubt. But that even then, it sort of shows and highlights seedy things, negative connotations, right? Like cheating and back alley stuff. And it kind of like, it's got a little vibe to it. Do you think there could be, do you think that would be helpful if there was a show like Queen's
I mean, it depends on the format. Like, I think you could do that, but I think you could show a positive life of somebody who's like, hey, I didn't want to go a regular 9 to 5. I wanted to be a poker player.
Exactly,
and show them like how they have a life. And maybe they don't have to be like a jillionaire. It doesn't have to be all glamoury. It could just be like, look, I make X dollars a year, but like I live my life my way. And it's empowering. And I have many friends and social and explode. Like a lot of the poker guys got rich off crypto, and because they were in poker, right? They were like average poker players, mediocre players, whatever, but they killed it in crypto, right? Like I'm retired, right? Like they got exposed to this thing. They saw it. They have mathematical brains. They think about things in a different way. And they absolutely crushed it. Right. And so, I think following that aspect, and not necessarily in a movie format, but maybe like in you got to follow the mediums that people are doing. And I think a short series on different poker players in a positive light. I think that's better than just another drama about somebody going and chasing a dream or whatever and doing well.
I was thinking like Rounders too, but like Rounders, like Cobra Kai, kind of like that, like bringing back it, making a series.
I gotta be honest with you, I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of that. Why? Because we have enough real life positive stories out there, like a file like a documentary that is real, does it justice, and is positive for poker. We don't need to make shit up.
Yeah.
Like, why do I need to make shit up?
That's
you know what I mean? Get a camera crew, follow guys, and follow like 6 or different guys and girls and different stories and how they came to love poker and what they like about it, how it's having a positive impact on life. What are the other externalities that are positive in life? What are the bad parts about it? And what is the mental and emotional resolve you need to have, right? Like, why am I need to make shit up?
For sure. I know you got travel day. You're shaking and baking. This has been always a pleasure. The last question I want to leave you with is, what would you say has been the number one thing from from poker that you've taken into like applied to real world? We kind of talk about the relationships, the people and stuff, but is there anything like fundamentally you think that just in people by playing poker, learning poker is just like going to be a positive for their life? Like with risk, how they tolerance, how they understand.
I knew it, but I think like it highlighted certain things. I think it's indifference. The biggest thing like that got really highlighted in poker, especially recently, is the concept of indifference.
Mm-hmm.
I've always known it, whatever, but I've like kind of now forced that in other areas of my life. You know what I mean? Like getting to the point, you know, and so, you know, so that allows me to, you know, take risky decisions and be indifferent. Results like, you know, that whole idea, like the whole idea of like I've always been, I think traders and poker players, they have the same mindset and the same fundamentals. They just don't have the same learnings and skills, right? So we're always you know mismatching the same concepts, except poker players have done it in this game and traders have done it in this game, right? And so, but revisiting those fundamentals in poker has reinforced it in my professional and personal life.
It's funny. I remember when we were in I believe Israel, and we went to that dinner. Do you remember this? Where the guy, where like it came to Bill, and there was like 6 guys and some girls, and the guy like, you know what I'm talking about? And
yeah.
Guys to pay the bill, or like we were like, yeah, we'll chop it up, but then it wasn't like a crazy bill. It was like an okay dinner or whatever, and like the guy, they wanted to chop it all a certain way, and like you almost got like you and the guy were like talking, everything was fine, and at the end got in such a disagreement, but it was just kind of crazy because like, you know, I think that there's
it almost got physical. Like it almost got like,
it was wild.
It was like 3 or 4 sentences away from it being like, hey, you know, like it was weird, but it was just a cultural difference. And like, you know, we were culturally like, you know, guys pay the bill, we chop it up, and that's how it is. And they were culturally like, no, everybody pays their own bill here. You know, and he was American and he came over,
right? And because
he felt like we were
part of the side stories, he was flexing a little too. I mean, like there was sort of like, it was very apparent he was doing well and whatever. So it was just kind of like that side of it. Like I kind of didn't mesh well. I respect culture.
And so we don't like, he felt, I guess he felt like we were like making fun of him or like putting him down. And we felt like he was being dicky and douchey. And you know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? Like making the girls play. And so like, I don't know why this segues into poker. Like, what does that have to do with where did this come from, Jeff? Out of nowhere.
Well, I was thinking more about life less like learnings in poker and just in general, like how I was thinking of this specifically because people, I think like people that play poker have a good with like risk isn't the right word, but sort of understanding odds, statistics, and just numbers and math. Like I just kind of look at it like real life, like emotional intelligence, if you will. I don't know. Like I just feel like there's a lot of lessons in poker, like not always taking the best of it, or you know, different things. I don't know why this triggered with me. You're right. It's not like directly on topic, but I just think that like there's a lot of skills in life, things that you can learn.
Yeah, I mean, how someone deals with
losing, how someone deals with other people's success. I mean, this is a little bit of a tangent, but it's sort of, I just like, I don't know. I was thinking like a table setting, a group of people, and you know, I just think that there's like a lot of times I think poker players, you know, the good ones and people that think about things can problem solve and deal with I guess problem solving. I think that poker, like in general in business, I think like if a poker player you were to hire a trader, I think they can just kind of deal with situations and money and put things into perspective quickly. I don't know.
Poker player and trader are interchangeable.
Yes.
To me, they're interchangeable. So like if you go into poker, you might get, you know, a refresher on some concept or fundamental lessons that you weren't necessarily doing well. And it's like poker is a reflection of you, right? And so you're like, oh shit, if I'm doing this here on the poker table, am I doing this here in the trading arena, in my professional arena? Or if you're a poker player and you're trading and you're like doing some stupid shit and you're like, wait a minute, am I doing this on the poker table too? You know what I mean?
Like honestly, what the reason I think I thought of it right there was because I was thinking about like how to think about risk and just a general principles and money. Like what came to mind was credit card roulette, which we've obviously, you know, that's like a common thing, but like it's kind of hard. If I go to dinner a regular dinner with no one that plays poker or something, I don't even want to bring up credit card roulette or, you know, the app, like remember in Bahamas where you click it and it's like random. Cause like, I think if I win, people think it's like rigged or something, or they don't understand. And it's like, they can't conceptualize that it's like an even chance, right? And like it's just kind of how it works. But like you know, I'm sure you don't do credit card.
It's fine expected outcome. It doesn't matter, right? Like it doesn't matter. You're indifferent. You're completely indifferent to what happens.
Yeah, but like to other people, like they're not going to get over it. That could ruin their night if they lose the credit.
Oh, it's happened. Oh, we've seen it happen. We've seen it like
it's super cool. Like it's all fun until someone gets hurt. But I'm just kind of thinking like that. Like for me, you know, it's just like real situations, like you said, indifference. That's what I'm thinking about, and it's just different people process differently. Well, listen, I know you got to run here. You know, we'll be seeing you soon. This is always a treat, man. Thank you so much for coming on and doing this. And yeah, all the best. I know there's a lot of events coming up. That Duke thing was fun. I know coach, did you see that last game? You saw they lost?
No, I missed the last game.
They lost the last game. So we actually got to see a home game and where Duke won. That was last second, kind of very exciting. And, you know, all the best. Safe travels. We'll see you very soon. And this is, again, Coin Rivet, episode number 4 in the books. Bill Perkins, check them out. Die with Zero book. Got to get it. It's a must. And on all socials. Where would you recommend someone to watch you to follow along your journeys more? Instagram, Twitter?
I mean, Instagram, if you just want to see lifestyle and bullshit and pictures and like goofing off, and like, you know, if you want to see my random bad takes or hot takes or good takes and up in the Twitter streets, you know, Twitter is my favorite distraction. I actually get value out of it, out of my feed. And then occasionally I like, you know, I'll be Twittering it away. So sure. I'm BP22 on Twitter, and I am Bill Perkins on Instagram.
There it is. You guys heard it first. Give him a follow. Wow, Bill, always hot takes, great takes, fun takes. We'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Boom.